All right, thank you. Welcome, everyone. If you're listening live or on demand, my name is Sara Benhamron. I am an industry cloud architect aligned to sustainability in the GPS US technical team at Microsoft. I am a brunette woman wearing a black long sleeve v-neck shirt. I have my hair up in a ponytail with a yellow ribbon, and I'm wearing a gold hamster necklace with dangling earrings. Today, I'm going to talk about the Microsoft Emissions Dashboard. It is formerly known as the Sustainability Calculator. You are in the right session. We recently changed the name. The change in the branding again was so recent. I'm in the process of getting used to it, so you might hear me use both names interchangeably during the session. Just know I'm talking about the same thing, and yeah, uh, looking forward to it. So for today, I am just going to try and keep things simple. I'm going to give you some of the basics, what it is, what's the value for an organization, some instructions on how to set it up, and of course, I'll show you the tool itself and walk you through it. And then I'll just share some of the resources for the Before 2030 campaign. So before I go straight into the calculator itself, I think it's good to set the stage for what are we even trying to do as Microsoft for sustainability. And you might have seen this already. It was announced back in January 2020. These are bold commitments to sustainability. We want to be carbon negative by 2030, water positive by 2030, zero waste by 2030, and we are building the planetary computer to better monitor, model, and manage the world's ecosystem and protect more land than we use. Now, that being said, we didn't just wake up one day in January and decided to do this. These are actually just our latest and most bold goals. We have our own journey that we've been walking through for the past decade. And I won't go into details. They're seeing it pop through the slide. I really just want to make sure I use our time wisely. Since you know our bold commitments, our current commitments, that's all you really need to know for now. I just want you to be aware that it's just the culmination of a journey that's been going through the past decade. So again, these are our bold commitments. Now, why do they matter? Why are they important? Well, most companies, just like ours, would agree on committing to sustainability, right? However, the issue they face once they do commit to sustainability is that they don't really know where to get started. Why? Because tackling sustainability is not as easy as it sounds, right? Like you say you want to commit to sustainability, but what does that really mean? Where do you start? What's your baseline? How do you measure your footprint? And how do you track progress and know that you're making strides in sustainability, right? So we have worked through and built a range of tools and solutions to help us as well as our customers and partners to do that. And the sustainability calculator or the emissions dashboard is one example of that. What you need to know before we dive into it is that the carbon math, the carbon accounting is complex. It's very, very complex. As you can imagine, the sustainability, the supply chain pipeline is not as simple as it used to be, right? It's not, I go down the stairs to the corner shop and I buy a flower from the person who grew, and cut and sell the flower, right? It's not as simple as that anymore in this day and age. There's an entire supply chain behind me purchasing that one flower, and that one purchase of that one flower carries a lot of emissions that I might not be aware of as a consumer. So it is complex to try and then scope out and calculate what that footprint really is. And how science accounts for this complexity is by classifying those layers of complexity in three scopes. And that scientific approach is the same one in which Microsoft is grounding its strategy. So when we talk about scope one, and these three scopes are gonna pop up through the calculator. So I wanna make sure that you understand those three things. Scope one are the direct emissions that your activities create. So these are emissions that are owned and that come from company owned and controlled resources. So think about your company facilities, your buildings, the company vehicles. Scope two, we're talking about indirect emissions that you still own. So that comes from the production of electricity or heat that you use. Scope two is really all about electricity. We're talking about the emissions that are generated by the purchase of energy from a utility provider, the consumption of purchased electricity, stream, heat, and cooling, that sort of thing. And then scope three, everything else is the indirect emissions that are not owned. They're all indirect value chain emissions. So think about things like purchased goods and services, capital goods, business travel, the end-of-life treatment of a sold product. This, as you can imagine, is the largest. Even when you combine scope 1 and 2, scope 3 is typically the largest. And fun fact, we as a cloud vendor will typically classify as a scope 3 for our customers and partners who are purchasing cloud from us. We're one of those purchase goods and services. So now that that's clear, let's talk about the sustainability calculator / the emissions dashboard. So this is our way of providing transparency into our cloud carbon emissions, including all 3 of the scopes. So what does it give an organization? It gives you 3 core things that are important on your sustainability journey. The first one is it really eases your sustainability reporting. So as you start venturing into your scope emissions and reporting on those, and more so even as you start venturing into the land of scope 3 emissions, because you're facing pressure from your customers, your investors, is really just the right thing to do, right? You want to be able to report on that. That's kind of what the calculator will do. It will enable that reporting for you. It will enable you to track those measures, and you can filter out by the scopes. I'll show you the tool later on. But again, you can see the scope 3 emissions for Microsoft infrastructures. By carbon accounting rules, again, our customers inherit those scope 3 as category 1 of purchase goods and services, as I said. So our emissions are inherited to our customers. The second thing that you get from the calculator is the validated methodology. So again, I told you it's so complex, right? How do you know you can trust the math? Well, we don't just come up with this, and it's not something that we're trusting blindly either. We have gotten this validated by third parties multiple times. There's also a white paper on it that you can read. You can access that through the calculator itself as well. It also gives you an abbreviated version of the methodology. It really does describe the approach to the calculation of those scope 3 emissions and explains how customers can transparently track those emissions and the impact of your Azure services usage. So again, you can read the white paper, but we have validated by third parties. We have partnerships with academic research and to also further validate and keep improving the process. And the third thing that you get with it is, well, you remember those commitments that I talked about earlier, those big, bold commitments? You might be wondering, how does the calculator tie to those overall goals? Well, really, it's your way as a customer and a partner, as an organization, to check in on us, to make sure that we are hitting our carbon goals. Because as we reduce our footprint over time, you will see that reflected on your own footprint in the dashboard. And I'm going to show an example of that once we demo the tool. So again, value for the leadership across organizations. All of them are starting to hear about green IT. All of them want in on it. Everybody is committing to sustainability. It's just the wave. It's happening finally, right? And one of the simplest ways an organization can start to reduce their carbon emissions is if you have data on the table, right? You have a baseline. You need that to get started. And so that's really the main value that the calculator, the emissions dashboard is giving you. It's giving you that baseline. It's giving you a place to see what your footprint looks like and start tackling that and taking steps to decrease that. And then you can see whether or not that's actually working. And again, you can benefit from the fact that we have made our bold commitments, and then you will see those benefits in your own footprint over time. The other thing that it gives you is, if your organization isn't quite yet all in on the cloud yet, well, this is just another incentive to help push for that modernization in your org. More often than not, it is quite rare if we don't see an 80% footprint reduction from organizations that go from their own data centers to the cloud. Very rare that we don't see that. It's typically it is just going to be a huge reduction of your footprint, and not so much because because people who have their own data centers are doing anything wrong necessarily, but we have gotten so good at using energy efficiently at scale with our data centers, and that's where the vast majority of the benefit comes from. So some background information again on what I talked about. Our methodology and everything is grounded in science. These are just the links to the studies. You can feel free to access them once you have access to this deck. You can check them out. Again, it kind of covers the transition from scopes 1, 2, and 3. The latest one, when we talk about carbon accounting, as I said, it's not like regular accounting. It's not simple math. So just keep in mind also that industries like the tech industry, electronics industry is not as regulated as other markets. So for example, like oil and gas, right? That's heavily regulated industry. So what that means though is that there are less standards on how you interpret carbon emissions. So what we've done to ensure that we're going in the right direction is we bring in experts at calculating carbon. We do a study, and then based on that, we validate again with a third party, and then we validate again with academic institution. The 2018 study, for example, that was Stanford University who validated it. And then we have, and that one was focused on the carbon savings that you will get if you switch from your data center to cloud. This new study, the second one, the methodology white paper, that one is focused on the math for the calculation. So all of that is just focused on those scope 3 emissions. How do we calculate that? How do we make sure that we're getting an accurate representation of our scope 3 emissions? So what was the result of some of these studies? Well, again, 22 to 93% more energy efficient. And I know that sounds like a big range because it depends, right? You still have some data centers that were being operated at low efficiency, middle efficiency, high efficiency. So depending on that, your improvement in terms of the energy efficient comparison would have been a little bit different. So that's why there's a big range. A traditional data center, though, again, like when we've seen our customers migrate, it's at usually an 80% reduction of the footprint. We also are more carbon efficient, so that study put out like 72 to 98% more carbon efficiency than the traditional data centers. So this is the part that you all came for, the demo of the tool. Let me go ahead and share my screen so you can see it. And this is really where we're going to spend most of our time. All right, let me know whenever you can see it. It might take a second to populate. Let me check the chat window just to ensure that you folks can see. All right, I think that you should be able to see now. All right, perfect. So this is the emissions dashboard that you're seeing right now. This is the main, once you set it up, and I'll explain how to set it up in a moment, but I want to just show you the tool first. And what you see on this main dashboard are just 3 key metrics: emissions, usage, and carbon intensity. When we're talking about emissions, that also includes a end of the year forecast that you see here. Then your usage and the carbon intensity. Carbon intensity is one of the most interesting metrics because you can use it for so much. One of the most common uses is to do carbon emissions over revenue. That can help you understand, for example, if a certain product is incredibly carbon intensive, and does that make up for the returns that you're generating on revenue, right? As an example. Here, what we are showing you is carbon emissions over usage. That's what you see, and then I'll explain why. So imagine this was a live environment. Of course, when your usage spikes or grows, so will your emissions, right? That being said, what we hope you see is that as Microsoft continues to invest in different things that reduce our emissions, such as renewable energies, for example, and even more technologies to decrease our scope 3 emissions by 55% by 2030, then you should see this number drop. If you're a customer who has been with Azure for a long time, then you should actually be able to see a drop that happened here somewhere. And that is from some investments in renewable energies during that time. And again, as we get closer to our commitments of removing all non-renewable sources from our infrastructure by 2025, then you'll continue to see that decrease. So as a customer who is purchasing cloud from us, you're directly benefiting and seeing your footprint decrease. So that's kind of like the main value that organizations will get from this. And then there's another metric here, the metric for cloud usage that we talked about. That is normalized. It's a normalized version of your Azure consumed revenue. It's accounting for things like price difference between regions. And more importantly, we have to make sure that this is only including your paid for Azure. So my scope 3 emissions by carbon accounting rules are going to be the stuff that you're paying for. We're classifying it as the purchase goods, right? So if let's say that you were to do a trial of one of our products or services, that should not be included per carbon accounting rules. That is not part of your emissions, that's part of our emissions, part of our just normal business expense, right? So that's why it's a normalized measure on your usage, because we want to make sure that we take stuff that should not belong as far as carbon accounting goes. This view on the dashboard on the calculator is going to show you all scopes, but you can filter to 1 and 2 if that's all you want. For some regulatory reasons, like the only ones that are required are 1 and 2 for some organizations. Most organizations, though, they want to see all 3, even if they don't end up including scope 3 as part of their carbon accounting. So that's why we have it here, but you can filter out the report and only see 1 and 2 if that's what you want. So yeah, that's just the main dashboard. Let me go ahead and now show you the next tab. And just a disclaimer, this is just a sample data, sample environment. This is not our data at Microsoft. So everything here is just a sample data. You can play with it when you actually download the app yourself. It comes with the sample data. So you'll see this. This is not connected to your data. You will get this message that says connect to your data. But I'm not going to do that. So this next tab, the emissions details dashboard view. The most interesting thing here is this map view over here. The size of the circles that you're seeing are actually the amount of emissions that are coming from that region. One disclaimer to clarify, because we've gotten this question before. It's a map. There, if you zoom in or if you click through, you're going to find latitude and longitudes. No, that is not our data centers. We have gotten that question asked, like, oh, are you exposing where they are? No, we're not. This was just for the sake of putting this on a map, a randomly chosen latitude and longitude. It is not any information that could point you to our data centers. So again, the circles, again, the amount of emissions are coming from that region. The color is the carbon intensity. A darker shade means a higher intensity. Now, that being said, remember, we're going to be 100% renewable by 2025. I don't want you moving your resources from one region to the other just for the sake of like, oh, this region has a lower intensity. You don't need to do that. It's going to be much more complex and unnecessary change since we're going all 100% renewables by 2025. If you were in Europe or North America, our scope 2 there is already 0 since we already have 100% renewable energy there. So that's just a fun fact for you guys to know. And so, yeah, this is that dashboard. I know it can be a little daunting for some of you to see this. This here is separated, again, given carbon emissions, carbon emission accounting rules. Here you have your scope 1 and 2 at the bottom left. And again, if you were in Europe, you will see those carbon, your scope 2s at 0. Because again, scope 2 is the ones that are mapped to electricity. Let's now go to the emission saving. And this one's interesting. We get a lot of shock and disbelief because it looks too good to be true, but it is true. We have that white paper on it, and we double checked with third parties multiple times. But yeah, here is what you can see as far as compared to a traditional data center versus the cloud. What are some of the emission savings if you were to do this? And again, you can modify like what the scale of that, the efficiency of your traditional data center is. So that's again accounting for that range that I mentioned before. If you have a data center that had low efficiency, high efficiency, you can make those changes here. You can mention how much energy, renewable energy you already purchased, and that will show you and generate like an estimate of what your emission reduction will be. This is just a snapshot. There's actually a new estimator on those savings that you can click in, and it actually would just be a little more specific, and you will give more details about your particular data center. But we're not going to do that right now. I just want to show it to you. It's quite simple to start using. The thing that a lot of people get more excited about actually is the report preparation. So there's two. There's your GHG preparation report for accounting, and then you have your usage report. Both useful. This one, though, again, becoming more of a standard to report on for regulation and compliance, depending on where you are at. So again, this one you can filter, you can export that data. It's typically, I think it's updated on the 10th of the month for last month, for the previous month's data. The reason for that, as you can imagine, there's just a lot that needs to happen for us to provide you with that data. And this is typically not information that people need real time, near real time, or like accessible on demand. So this is going to be, again, just maybe like a month behind, a month or so behind. But it gives you that nice preparation for your report. And here you can export that data, you can filter it out. It's very useful for your carbon accounting. And again, as I mentioned earlier, this the calculation methodology. Everything that I kind of more or less went around explaining during this call is documented here. So this kind of walks you through what the scopes are. It walks you through how the scopes get inherited depending on who you are, right? If you're a partner, if you're a customer, if you're us, if you're one of our manufacturers, like who owns what type of scope and which ones get inherited. Similarly here, we're describing how scope 3 is calculated step by step. And at the bottom here, you will see some definitions. This is more for sake of accessibility, but as you can imagine, if you're new to the space, you might not be familiar with some of these phrases, with some of the metrics that are being used. So this is just very useful little cheat sheet for you to take a look at. Again, if you're more visuals, those images at the top are very, very useful at helping you grasp the concept. But again, you can read it. There's links to the white papers as well. But I think we have shared those on the chat window. And sorry about that. My page just went away for a second. So yeah, we could share those on the chat window. I definitely encourage you to check out the methodology page. It's just a good refresher if you had any doubts of what I mentioned and we don't get your questions answered today, or you're more visual, you need to read something versus just being told by someone. This is a great tab. It does a really, really great job at summarizing and abbreviating the process. And it's always available as soon as you go into the tool. So you don't have to go outside, find a separate documentation. It's just right here, lives right here. And it will be updated as our process gets updated as well. The Learn More tab, this is just more about sustainability at Microsoft. There's some videos that walk you through the tooling again, if you need that. And then just more about sustainability at Microsoft as a whole and what we're doing for carbon accounting, for our emissions dashboard, all that stuff, all that good stuff. You can just come here. Some legal information. I won't go into that. It's boring, but it needs to be there. And then they manage the data. So we do not connect to your data automatically. You do have to connect your data to the tool. You have to have the right permissions, and I'm going to go into that in a moment to connect to your data because, again, it is not your data, it's the organization's data. So you do have to have the right permissions and access to be able to do that. And then the more important thing is, if for whatever reason your organization doesn't want to use this anymore, you can go ahead here and delete that data. We just want to ensure that you know how to do that. So that's the tool itself. Now let me go back and show you how to set it up if you were to set it up. I'm just going to go back and share the deck again. So just bear with me for one moment. And if you have questions, I know we're going to have some Q&A time after this, but feel free to put them in the chat window so that you don't forget what those questions are, and I'll take a look. All right, here we go. Let me know when you guys can see, or actually it should be popping out soon. I can also see that. All right, let me just bring us back to where we were at. All right, so yes, how to set it up. The first thing to know is that if you, I do want to clarify, if you ever used the sustainability calculator in the past, the prior version of it, then you might have been either frustrated that you couldn't use it or happy that you could, because it was only really for enterprise agreements. Now it actually does work for MCAs or CSPs again, because we had an update for the Power BI connector for the Azure Consumption API, the Azure Cost Management connectors. So now again, MCA, direct CSPs, enterprise customers. This is for everyone. I would admit for MCAs and direct CSPs, it's just a bit more of a complex process to set it up, but we have it very well documented. I'll make sure to share the link to the documentation in the chat window. But yeah, the one thing you're gonna do know is that if you are on an MCA, you have to be a billing admin to set this up. If you are a CSP, this is only for direct CSP. Why? It's just because of carbon accounting rules. Again, they inherit the emissions and they need to report that to their end customer themselves, right? So just be aware of that for a moment. And then I'm going to walk you through just the basics on how to set up the tool if you were an enterprise. But just regardless of which one you are, the docs page is your most important resource. We keep updating that as we get feedback on, hey, this is not working. I don't know how to do this. We update that documentation. So that's the best place and your safest bet at how to use it. You can also engage your Microsoft team if you have a PDM, PTS, if you have a accounting, if you have someone at Microsoft, engage them. So again, you have to be an EA admin. I can't not repeat that so many times. Why? Again, it's because this is based on billing data, and for privacy reasons, it just has to be accessed by the person with that kind of level of access. Again, it's because carbon accounting rules. This is the carbon emissions of that company, of your company. And so it's your company's data. It can't just be anyone at the company who decides like, hey, I want to see what the footprint of this company is, because that company, your company might not want you to know. Ideally they do, but it has to be that person. So today you do need to have a Power BI Pro license. If you don't, you can leverage the free trial, and that's today. We're hoping that goes away if it hasn't already. Again, a lot of changes happened with the rebranding for the emissions dashboard, so I might be a little behind, but latest I know, you do need that Power BI Pro license. Just feel free to leverage a free trial to get started if you don't have that. And then just be aware that the data, that very first time that you connect to it, that can take up to 24 hours. I know it's a long time. But again, we don't pre-populate any of these. We don't do any of these connections beforehand because, again, it's for privacy reasons, your data. So that very first time, you can imagine we're connecting to a lot of things to track the emissions. So that very first time can take a long time. Just be prepared for that. So, okay. Now that all of this is clear on what you can expect when you want to set up the calculator, the very first thing you're going to do, if you are that admin, is you're going to go into your Azure Enterprise portal and you're going to get that enrollment number. One thing to note is if you were, let's say that you were towards the end of your agreement and you get a new enrollment number afterwards, you would have to go ahead and reset this up. It is by number, at least for now. And that I would just recommend archiving the data before you change to the new enrollment. Then again, ensure that you have Power BI Pro. Just get the free trial if you need it. Then you're going to go to App Source and you're just going to download the Sustainability Calculator / the Emissions Dashboard app. It has a little leaf that kind of looks like a graph as a symbol. That's the latest, that's the version that you want. It will be called the Emissions Dashboard on App Source. If you see the older version, I think it should have been removed already, but if you do see it, that one has like a little calculator. Don't go with that one. This one has the latest functionality, and it's the one most up to date. It's the one that you want to use. So once you download that, it's just going to bring you up to Power Apps to set up the work environment, the workstation, and it will just set up the app on Power BI. And once that's done, then all you really have to do is connect your data. Initially, it's going to show you, as I mentioned, like the view that I had. It's going to show you the sample data so you can play around with it, look through the demo, then connect it to your data, right? So connect it to your enrollment number. And this is the most important part. When you are connecting your data, again, you have to be that EA admin. You have to do the steps as they are listed in the documentation, as they are shown in here, because otherwise it's just not going to work. And one call out is when you try to authenticate, right? And you go through that steps, it pops up that second stage to authenticate you. You do not want to use your Power BI credentials here. Here's any user, if you're a random user in the organization and you're trying to do this, it's not you as the Power BI licensed user authenticating here. This is the person with the EA admin access authenticating here. There's a separate part where it might ask you to authenticate as a Power BI user. This is not it. When you're connecting to the data, it's about authenticating as the user who has access to that data. All right. So you're going to set that up. And once that's ready, then you have your dashboard, just like how I showed you earlier on the demo. And that is it as far as content goes. I do hope I did leave some time for Q&A. So let me just go and look through the chat window and see if I missed anything. Oh, Adi, thank you so much for putting the links to the white papers on the chat window. Garnet, do I know what the efficiency of Rackspace in Chicago is? I do not know at the top of my head. And then, yeah, that's all I see on the chat window. If there is any other questions, feel free to come off mute. I'm also going to double check the chat window again. I have it open. But yeah, don't be shy. And if you don't have any questions, I do want to also share that we have some additional resources on the slide that Adi will share with you in a moment. But yeah, any questions? If not, well then, oh, I do see one. That's a great question, Adi. So Adi's question was, are companies/organizations making this information public? Honestly, that depends on the company and the organization. It differs. A lot of depending on, and it also actually depends on where you live and what the regulations and compliances are, or like where your company is based out of. We are being very transparent about our footprint and our progress to our commitments. We put out a report on it, but there's also a simpler way by using the dashboard to even see that in real time, near real time. The other thing actually that reminds me of is when we're talking about renewable energies, for example, that you will see like in the dashboard, hey, we made some investments in renewable energy, so your footprint went down. Today, we actually don't categorize by energy type. So there is that nuance that depending on where you're based off, something might or may not be considered a renewable energy. So for example, hydro, that's one that in some places is not considered a renewable energy. Today, we don't do the separation of the energy type when we're saying renewable energy savings on the calculator. That's just something to be aware of depending on where you live. And it's just a conversation that we'll need to have. Next question, how do you suggest partners leverage this dashboard as they build new solutions in general or for this hackathon? Yeah, so if you're a partner, a couple of things. First and foremost, you can first use this yourself as a customer, right? And you can use this depending on how you're using Azure, right? To see what the footprint is of your product. So let's say you're an ISV. If you're an ISV, you can when you one thing I didn't even mention necessarily on the demo, but you can actually go and filter on the report by subscriptions. So you can see what's the footprint of that ISV product that you have deployed on Azure. We are looking to include research and tags as filterable elements, but that we don't, or to be able to see the footprint of those separately from the subscription. That's not there yet, but it's part of the roadmap. So I do recommend as an ISV that you can see the footprint of that, at least at the subscription level. The most interesting thing for our partners, though, is like a next evolution kind of version that's going to be that we announced back in Inspire, which was the Microsoft Cloud for Sustainability. That is going to allow for so much more. The other thing is with the estimator, that's something our services partners can use in pre-sales engagements. If you're an SI, if you're consulting with a customer and you're trying to convince that customer to migrate to the cloud, then you can use that estimator before they have done any migration to kind of show them, hey, this is how much your footprint will go down if you were to migrate your workloads, right? So you can use that in conversations with your customer as well. That's a really neat feature. And again, the sustainability cloud that was announced in Inspire that's coming, that's going to allow you to extend a lot more, build your own iteration points, build your own IP. It's not quite what we show you here, but it's even more. This one again, one thing again, I think I don't know if I mentioned, the calculator is showing your Microsoft Cloud footprint as far as Azure. I think I don't know if it today includes Microsoft 365. If not, it would. And then the Dynamics component, that one's interesting because we are showing you the footprint of what the consumption of Dynamics, which is your Azure in the backend, right, is. But I don't believe you could have filtered by Dynamics today. You can filter by a lot of our services and products. I think you might have seen that on the dashboard. On the filterable side, again, you can filter by subscription, filter by product, filter by service, all of those kind of things. So those were great questions. Let's see. And then for this hackathon, I will admit it depends. It depends. Are you the right person in your organization to set this up? Do you have the right level of permission? Are you an admin? If not, reach out to your IT. Reach out to your Microsoft liaison relationship partner to figure out who has that access and can help you set this up. And again, it's just a good way to either use the estimator, measure what's the potential savings of the solution that you're trying to build, measure what's the potential footprint of that subscription that you're working on hacking on. It really depends on what your hack is. But if you have any questions, I am on the WeChangers community. Feel free to reach out directly to me, and I'll keep an eye out on that. Let me see if I miss anything else. Will you be sharing the slides or an instruction sheet to access the calculator? That's a great question. I'm not 100% sure what the mechanism is, for sharing the slides. I'm happy to share them. I just want to make sure that I share them in the right place. As far as the one sheet, let me just put a link to that on the chat window for you, so you guys can access that. And I also owe you the docs page, so let me put that in the chat window as well. All right, so yes, slides are going to be posted on the community general group on the WeChangers community space. I also just went ahead and put the link to the documentation for the calculator. And then let me go ahead and also add the one pager on how to set it up that we have on that chat window for you. Great question, though. Appreciate that, Garnet. Okay, so you should have now the link to the doc, and I don't see the option for me to attach the document on the chat window. Might be because of the type of Teams call this is, but I will make sure to post that also on the general channel on the WeChangers page, with deck. And is there any other questions?
Well, thank you so much, Sarah.
My
So in
pleasure. Thanks,
closing, we invite all partners to join us for the Pound Bill for 2030 campaign. We have this massive challenge ahead of us and also a massive opportunity to use all our expertise, regardless of our role, to drive collective action, innovation, and impact. On the slide, you'll see a summary of all the key resources related to the overall Bill for 2030 initiative. And thanks again, Sarah. And I would like to remind everybody to take a look at our full hackathon live event schedule. And you can join us tomorrow at 7 a.m. That's Tuesday at 7 a.m. Pacific to join us, Hector Minto and Donna Sakar, on enabling accessibility through inclusive design. Thank you all very much and have a great hackathon.